Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome. We are thrilled to have you with us tonight for what promises to be an amazing journey to one of the most remote and breathtaking places on Earth called Ellesmere Island, home of the Arctic wolf. For those of you who've been following us for a long time, you probably will remember our wolf Atka, who was an Arctic wolf and an unforgettable animal. You will see him in all of these images, at least I do. So it's very exciting. My name is Rebecca. I'm the curator here at the Wolf Conservation Center. This evening is made possible thanks to two remarkable people, Marianne Barnett and Michael Hayes, a husband and wife team, passionate conservationists, and longtime WCC supporters. Marianne is a professional wildlife photographer whose images bring wild landscapes and their inhabitants to life. Michael is a dedicated advocate for wildlife and wild places, and together they recently undertook a once-in-a-lifetime expedition to Canada's far north in search of the rarely seen Arctic wolf. We are so grateful for having them to be able to share their experience with us. This webinar is our way of thanking all of you. It's an exclusive to supporters like you, whose generosity and commitment power everything that we do. We hope tonight leaves you feeling inspired and energized. I know I'm already energized and it hasn't even started yet. A quick note before we begin, we will have a Q&A, of course, at the end of the presentation, but feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat, as they come to mind, so that we probably will be able to address some during the conversation. Some questions we will type in answers, and then we will get to the others at the end of the presentation. Tonight's webinar is recorded, so you will receive a follow-up email within the next week or so with the recording in case you'd like to rewatch it or share it with others. So I will leave it at that and let's begin.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening, everybody.
Thank you all for joining in tonight. Michael and I are very excited to share with you our nearly month-long expedition to Ellesmere Island. And we're getting ready. Okay, here we are. Ellesmere Island expedition in search of Arctic wolves. Just a short background on how this trip ever came about. The power of social media. About a year and a half ago, across my feed on Instagram, I saw a photo of Arctic wolves. And as a photographer, I could tell that these Arctic wolves were engaging with the photographer and very close to that person. So I took a chance, and the person's name is, the Instagram handle is Siberian Art. I sent him a message and asked if I could, I asked him, where did you see these beautiful wolves? And are you going back? And he responded, fortunately, he responded very quickly. And he said, these wolves are on Ellesmere Island. And I did know where Ellesmere Island was. I've been to Greenland several times. Michael has come with me, and I did know that Ellesmere Island was in the high Arctic, really the topmost island in the high Arctic of Nunavut, part of Canada. Anyway, Amit Eshel is the gentleman's name that I reached out to, and he said, yes, I am. These wolves are on Ellesmere Island, and I'm going back. It's a very difficult journey, and it requires a lot of coordination, and it's very challenging. There are very challenging conditions, and there are no guarantees that you're going to see any wolves, but chances are probably pretty good if we're there long enough. And I said, sign me up. So he said, I'm still putting it together. So we stayed in touch, and several months later, I think it was back in August, he reached back out and said, I have put together this itinerary. It is led by 3 Inuit guides out of Fjord. And here it is. And I read the scope of the trip, and I decided that it was a very good idea for me to inform my husband. I usually just sort of go on these trips and let him know maybe a month in advance, but this, I could tell, camping in Arctic frigid temperatures and, travel days, and just, I knew it was going to be a very, very challenging trip, also a very expensive trip. So I mentioned it to my husband once I got up the nerve back in August, and I said, I've been in contact with this individual who has these beautiful photos of Arctic wolves, and I would like to have the opportunity to go and showed him the itinerary, and he said, I want to go too.
It was kind of not even it was kind of a condition for her to go was for me to go, to be honest.
So lo and behold, there was supposed to be myself, Michael, and two other photographers, and Amit, the person that had been there before. And just a sidebar, he actually won Natural History Museum's Photo of the Year with one of the Arctic wolf pictures, and well deserved. These are beautiful, and they're so anyway. So about a month before the trip, Amit reached back out to us and said that there was a problem, and that the two of the photographers had backed out for unknown reasons, and would we still like to go? And we said yes. So fortunately, it was just Michael, Amit, and I. And in the next slide, you're going to see our journey to the far north. Okay. New York is where we live. We live out on the eastern end of Long Island. There were 3 travel days planned, 6 flights. You start out by getting to Ottawa. Ottawa is the jumping off point, Ottawa in Canada, the jumping off point to get to the high Arctic. Then you travel to a place, the capital of Nunavut, which is this high Arctic. There's Northwest Territories, which is off east of there, and then Nunavut, which kind of follows the areas up all to those islands up there. And that's Greenland with the ice cap up on the right. So the first stop was Iqaluit, which is the capital. That was about a 3.5-hour flight, and then off to Arctic Bay, which was just a stopover, get off, refuel, and then the next flight was to Resolute. We took Canadian North, which is an Inuit-owned and operated airline. The last flight, so we landed in Resolute and had our first taste of real Arctic storm. So we were stuck there for 2 days. This plane that you see on the right is our Indiana Jones style airplane. That is Amit in front of me. And I had no idea. I was still ecstatic with the thrill of going, had no idea really what I was getting into. But, and as you can see on this plane, you see these 2 drums. That is our fuel. We are going to a very, very remote place. And so we had to bring for the ski-doos or the snowmobiles our own fuel.
So the planes are Twin Otters, which are the workhorses of the Arctic, and they're very robust plane, and are used not just with Canadian North, but all through the Arctic. This plane did have skis on it, although we were landing on a firm surface.
Yes. So this was our charter, our luxury charter. And then you're going to see a little bit in the next video what it looked like, and then how what really dawned on me then, where we were going. This is where we were going. This is Ellesmere Island. It is absolutely stunning. But when you see that little video clip from an iPhone, you start to realize it's just us humans down there. There's nothing else there except the wildlife and the terrain. So you can go to the next slide. So it'll replay. Yeah, just see. So we landed about a mile from here, but it looked a lot like this. And we are in the section of Ellesmere Island called Eureka, and Eureka is supposedly the hotbed of wildlife, meaning the types of animals that are there are muskox, Arctic wolves, and there's allegedly about 200 Arctic wolves there in varying pack sizes that roam this area. So this is actually, we're on a little spit of land, but everything else is sea ice. This area is called Fjord, and this is our home base. Michael and I stayed in that orange tent. We had 3 Kamituks, which we had 3 ski-doos, 3 Inuit who met us there. They had traveled 350 miles by ski-doo north from their home in Fjord. We had 1 generator. We had Starlink, which was the most amazing internet reception I've ever had in my life. And a couple of coolers with all our food for the next 2 weeks. And also in Eureka is a weather station that is manned by Canada. This weather station is actually brought about by a co-op between the United States and Canada in like 1937. This weather station, which has its own little kind of couple of structures there, people fly in and out and do shifts there. And they realized in this weather station way back when that if they could monitor the weather in the high Arctic, they could much better predict our weather in the lower, the lower part of North America. And much to our surprise, the other party that was there, although we never saw them, Disney has been there. They came last summer. And they were there this winter, and they're doing a special on Arctic wolves, which will be one of the first of its kind. There's only a couple of shows that have been done about Arctic wolves, and they've all been done in the summer. No one is really, so this is like the first venture for them. And fortunately, we did know their photographer, their videographer, and we were able to communicate by satellite phone. So this is reality. This is a drone photo that I took. Okay. So it was also in that once we landed that we discussed with the Inuit. We had 3 guides, Terry, all below the age of 30. Terry Noah, that was his 10th time to ever come here in 3 years. Jason and Nolan. And it was explained to us that we would sleep during the day and then we would go out at night. The sun is not setting. They have 24 hours of daylight. And so for a photographer, this means you have about 4 hours of a golden hour where the sun is just at the horizon, and it's absolutely stunning. So we took a little nap, very excited about our surroundings, and off we went on a snowmobile for, about 2.5 hours, and it was very, very cold. This is the only wildlife we saw that night, which was a herd of muskox. And if you've never heard or seen a muskox before, it's kind of the Arctic version of their cows. Muskox is a food source for the wolves. And if you look in the middle of the photo, you're going to see a tiny little baby. And that baby was just according to the Inuit, the baby was just a few days old, and you could still actually see the afterbirth on the mother. And if you can also look in the middle of the picture, you're going to see those tiny little hay-like twigs, and that's their food. Amazing that it feeds these big beasts of animals, but they graze on this tiny little grasses, dead grass.
Winter grass.
So this was probably about 1 or 2 in the morning, and this was one of the coldest nights, which you'll see in the next slide on how we traveled. This is me, and if you'll see the Kamituck, we've got 3 ski-doos. Michael and I ride behind each Inuit who drives the ski-doo, and we pull this Kamituck. And inside this Kamituck is these are all handmade by the Inuit, and they have very few resources. But this has a canvas covering, and it has a Coleman stove in it. And we actually had to get inside there and warm up. It was incredibly cold that night. If you look at the picture on the right, one of the Inuit had to loan me his parka. The Inuit get a parka from an elder person in their family, and they pretty much have the same parka their whole lives. And I can tell you, I still had all my clothes on. It was the equivalent of, it was -15, but felt like -28, according to what little reception we had on our phones.
Well, you also, you have to realize, we're riding on these snow machines at 25, 30 miles an hour. So, the wind chill effect easily feels, close to -30, and we're talking Fahrenheit right now. It's not, Celsius. So it's cold.
And if you look at the location of the sun, this is about between 2 and 3 in the morning, and this is as low as it gets. And as you can see, the light is absolutely beautiful. Okay. So that was it for the night. One other thing that we did do, the only really intensive book that's been written on Arctic wolves, and I don't know if you can see this, is a book by David Meach.
Forward.
Okay, forward.
Sorry,
it's called The Ellesmere Wolves. I'm sorry, it's not. This is the cabin he built. He came every summer for over 20 years. I'm sure we can share this later with this book, but we both read this book before we went. I actually read it while I was there. But he did research on these wolves, and this cabin has been visited by maybe 25 people ever. So we were very fortunate. I mean, you start to get a sense of how lucky, as cold as we were then, how lucky we were to be able to visit this place, and thanks to the Inuit.
So one of the things in the background, you'll see kind of a plateau mountain. That's called Blacktop. Now, Blacktop was a particular area of interest to David Misch because there were I think there were 2 wolf dens that were used in different years. So he would be there in the summer, just slightly after when the wolves gave birth, and he would focus on wolf interaction over by that mountain there.
So, so you can go on to the next slide. So this was pretty much it. We went back and we could tell the storm was coming in, and here we go. We are now in a storm. This is what it looked like to go outside of our tent and try to go to the bathroom. It was very challenging. I mean, yes, it was very beautiful to see this, but when you're living in a tent, and it was so loud in that tent, it was just rattling. Our clothes we had to hang. Here's our tent. This was as the storm was letting up. It was still very cold, but we were stuck in the tent for 2.5 days, just only going out to go to the bathroom. The guides would come in, Terry, Jason, and Nolan would come in and bring us food that they made in their kamatak that they slept in. It was a wood structure, which you'll see again, I'm sure, in the slide deck. But we ate muskox, we ate seal, we had a lot of oatmeal. And this picture on the right, I at one point really thought I was going to lose a couple of my toes. It was so cold. And keep in mind, this wind would blow. It wasn't snowing, it was blowing snow. So the blowing snow would enter the bottom of our tents no matter. We stuck all of our luggage on the outside of our tent. We put snow blocks up, rocks up next to it. Still, the snow would come in and it would clog up this heater. That was our lifeline. It was absolutely, I can hardly describe the level of cold that it was. So after that, you know, we stayed in touch with Disney. Disney couldn't get their crew out either. It was just an unbearable storm. So after that, we did talk to Disney, though. They said they had witnessed a pack of 3 wolves nearby. So you can go to the next slide. So we took off, and these are these beautiful wolves that we found. It was a pack of 3. The picture on the left, literally, I'm laying down. These wolves, when we came upon them on our ski-doos, we stayed very far away from them, and we got out, assembled our cameras, and I just laid down, and the 3 wolves were laying in kind of a pod. But when they saw us, they immediately got up. One did a downward dog bow, and then started to trot directly toward us. These wolves had zero fear of us. They approached us with curiosity. They sniffed us. They pulled the bottom right. We unhooked our kamatak, and they came up and they pulled on our tow ropes. They peed on the ski-doos. They were absolutely stunning. One was playing peekaboo for a while. He was cute. He'd pop up, and then he would trot back out in front of us. So you can go to the.
But these wolves, that's fine. You can stay here. These wolves in Eureka have had exposure to people over many, many years. As we said, David Misch and his other biologists have been there during summers. The weather station is there. So they're a little more habituated to people than some of the other packs that we'll talk about later.
But they don't see people regularly.
Yeah, no, it's not every day.
It's very, very rare when they see people. And keep in mind that they roam and travel and hunt for food. But just to give you an idea, that's Terry Noah, the leader of our Inuit group, Terry, where the wolf comes up and just sniffs up and down. This wolf on the left usually the leader would come up first, and the leader would do kind of a check us out, And then that's a scent marking, but he's doing this right in front of me. I can't even fit him in my frame. I do not have a long lens on at this point. And they would, just kind of check us out, mill around. And then you can go to the next slide. And then they would move around us, check us out. And then they would move on. They would, and so we were fortunate enough to spend 5 hours with these wolves. The one on the left is kind of the peak of the golden hour. It was really beautiful. It was a pink sky, and it was just a photographer's dream. But it was just simply amazing how these wolves really didn't fear us. They didn't show an animosity. They didn't show any tension. They just were curious, and then they only were curious for maybe 10 or 15 minutes, and then they would trot on, and then they would have, and you'll see in the next slide, kind of a pack life. Well, this is just an up close. I mean, he was so close to me. This one, he was absolutely stunning. So the fur was so thick. I mean, obviously from where they live, but there's, I don't know if you can see it, but there's like icicles on his muzzle. And so if you go on to the next one, that they would, these are just some photos, but how they would travel. This particular pack and another pack we saw, when they would travel, they would spread way apart. And I don't know enough about it to know, like, these three would spread out, and maybe that's because they'd get a better scent on a meal or a muskox, or
It is different than if you've had experience with Yellowstone wolves, which many of us have had a lot of information and history about the Yellowstone wolves. They've been well publicized, and then they tend to run in a line. It's very different versus the tundra wolves, which spread out.
Yeah, I'm loving the questions, by the way. I can't wait to answer them at the end because they're really good questions. I just peeked at them. So this is one of my favorite photos. This is a photo along with one of the previous ones that I'll probably submit to some photography competitions. And by the way, I was the 7th woman in history to ever travel here. And that include the Inuit people do not come here. I'll explain that later, but only expedition. They can only do an expedition about 3 or 4 times a year. And less than 100 people have ever photographed these wolves. So it was an enormous privilege. And having seen these 3 wolves, I remember vividly at this point that I could probably be okay if we didn't see any more wolves. We were going to be on the ground traveling over 350 miles. And then that doesn't include the nightly searches for the wildlife. But I felt so privileged and so fortunate to have shared this space with these wolves. I can't tell you, like, you just think you can die right then. It's like, so anyway, this was one of my favorite photos. I've printed this very large and I'm very happy with it. So we can go on to the next one. And this is what they did. They were, at this point, they're pretty far away from us, but this is their pack life. And I observed the mated male and female. I actually observed them mating. The other one was, kind of off to the side. It had been mentioned, Amit, the other photographer, he said this is the pack he thought he photographed last year in April, and there were 8 of them. And then Disney had told us they had seen a pack of 5. And just as wolves do naturally, sometimes the packs break off from each other. A new mated pair, maybe a disperse, and a new male comes, or a new female, or something like that. But to see them joyfully doing this and licking each other and frolicking and playing, and you'll see in the next couple of photos, next one, jumping around, rolling, just like your pups do at home. And I will say, I'll answer one of the questions right now. I use a Nikon Z9. I had 2 Nikon Z9s, and I'm very, very thankful because my batteries actually lasted. I understand that Sony does not work at all in these frigid temperatures. And then Amit is a Canon ambassador, and he had to carry bodies inside his person, next to his chest, in order and continue to change them. But the challenge of taking photos is you leave your cameras out all the time. The minute you put the camera up to your face, you're just the small amount of body heat that's coming from you, it fogs up. So I'm a lot of times just using my finger on the back of the display panel and doing an eye control to follow the wolf's eyes. So some of them are not as sharp as I would like them to be, but I don't care. I'm so happy to have some of these photos. So you can go on to the next one. And this is, again, them just moving along. You know, they would, as the night progressed, these are all in a sequence. Absolutely beautiful, but always engaging with us. So you can go to the next. And then at one point, I'm a licensed drone photographer. I thought I might want to drone them. So I was carrying my extra glove with me, which I would use for droning. We had battery operated gloves. I can't even tell you, like, I've been to the Arctic, but not the high Arctic like this. I've been to Churchill several times, and high up in the West Fjords of Iceland. And this is a cold like I've never experienced in my life, nor has my camera. But at one point I was laying down flat, and the mated pair got up. They were good 50 yards away, and they started trotting towards me. And I had been told that, and I was all by myself laying flat on the ground, and I had been told by Amit and the Inuit that they'd never witnessed any aggressive behavior from the wolves, and there was nothing to fear probably, but I knew that I was off by myself, and I became a little intimidated. So I thought, well, I don't want to be the first. So I got up and mistakenly left my glove on the ground. And these wolves trotted right over to it, picked it up like Chewie had just delivered them a toy to their doorstep. And for about 15 minutes, they tossed this glove. They played keep away. They ripped it apart. And just like wolves do, they just suddenly dropped it and moved on. And I still have my glove. So it was a nice souvenir. Anyway, so this is the last we saw of them. And we had been, this is them kind of moving on. And this was, you know, the morning was arising and the light was changing. So this was the end of it for this pack of 3 that we were so fortunate to see. So we get back to camp and we have a little powwow, and the way that we discover wildlife in the Inuit is they're looking for tracks, and a lot of tracks, like polar bear tracks, wolf tracks, all kinds of tracks. And we decided that we also still had to go in the next 7 days, 350 miles, and search these other areas, 350 miles south to the nearest settlement, which is Fjord, which is where they live. And right before, so we decided we would pack up, and Michael and I said, we don't want to travel at night. It's so freaking cold. So sure enough, this little Arctic fox, you know, they are so beautiful. This one came to the camp and gave us a little, you know, dilly-dallied around like they do. The picture on the left has a muskox skull, if you can make that out. So that is a muskox skull that was most likely from a wolf kill. So off we pack up the tents, we get on the ski-doos, we're hauling 3 kamatucks, and off we go. And we're heading over the sea ice. We traveled over the sea ice. It is frozen solid. And along the way, we had just, oh, wow, an amazing adventure. I mean, there's glacial icebergs embedded. And, you know, and by the way, we were, to drink water, we would gather snow and melt the snow. And while we were in Eureka, we came, you know, after that windstorm, this gathering of snow became a little challenging. So every time you would be drinking, you'd have some floaters in your water. And the other thing is you always drank hot water. I mean, Michael and I both said the only thing we wanted was a glass of cold water, even though we were cold. Drinking hot water, it's not like you're drinking tea. It's like you're just drinking hot water. On one of these glaciers, fortunately, one of the Inuit had a pickaxe, and we had delicious glacier water for about 24 hours. And so it was beautiful. But we would stop with the kamatucks and have, they would boil some water and put it into an instant meal. You know, this is pretty much what we ate. We both lost a lot of weight here.
And then, so the body of water that we're traveling on right now is the Eureka Sound, that is between Axel Hedberg Island and Ellesmere Island, and we're running south towards Fjord. And in this picture, we're probably only 50 miles or so from where our camp was when we started
In Eureka.
in
Yeah.
Eureka or at Silder Fjord.
So yeah, and it was absolutely beautiful. And that's me on the bottom right. And what I'm looking around is we're starting to see some animal tracks, some polar bear tracks. So if you'll go to the next slide, some of the animals we did see, there were Arctic hare. And these Inuit, boy, they have grown up a near sustenance living. He found this Arctic hare in that white snow from about, I don't know, a 5-par, if you're a golfer, 5-par away. The seals would be there. The seals, this particular seal, they are ringed seals, is in front of its breathing hole. So it would be, the minute we would get close to it, the breathing hole, it would go down in the hole. It would have another hole, you know, further away where it would come back up, you know, to bask in the sun or whatever. And we polar bears. The polar bears here, if you've ever heard or people or know people have gone to Churchill, the polar bears there are front and center right at you. These polar bears are very skittish. I spied a polar bear and 2 cubs, and my Inuit was the lead Inuit guide, and all of a sudden, the next thing I know, we are charging up a mountain on that ski-doo trying to find the polar bear, and it was terrifying, I'll tell you that, but I lived. So this is the seal breathing hole. There's also, it has been said, and I do know that there are some summer pictures, that there are herds of Arctic hare there, hundreds of Arctic hares that gather. And that was one of our goals too, is to try to find a herd of our, you know, gathering of Arctic hares. Unfortunately, we didn't find that, but we found a lot of tracks. So what we decided to do is break for lunch here, and I set up a trail cam, hoping this seal would pop up again, but he did not, or she did not. But this is kind of our Arctic life, you know, chatting with the guides, trying to stay warm, and moving along in this incredible environment. This then, as we probably now about 100 miles or so from where we started, and we started to see an abundance of tracks. And the Inuit are they're professionally, they're able to determine how old the tracks are. These were not incredibly old tracks, but they were a couple of days old. And if you look on the right, you're going to see polar bear tracks, and you're going to see wolf tracks, and you're going to see a baby polar. It's kind of hard to see, but there's baby polar bear and there's wolves. That is the circle of life there. In this, and the gentleman on the left is Jason. Jason is an Inuit from Fjord who had never been here before. He had never traveled outside of his village. So that is how rare it is for these people. They're a community of 135 people. So in this particular picture, this is not a seal breathing hole. This is a seal den. And there were tracks were all around this den. And Jason decided that he would go down, because he volunteered. He goes, I want to go down and see if there's fresh blood down there. We were like, by all means, please go. If you want, at your own risk. And he went down there and he said, no, it's you know, a couple days old. But so that is a seal den where a polar bear is basically, if you've seen a pounce, they kind of push and pounce, they'll pounce on it. They have a keen sense of smell. They're going to dig down, they'll dig, drag the seal out, whether it's a pup or an adult, and they will eat the flesh and the blubber of the seal. And then the wolf tracks, when you see the wolf tracks, the wolf comes in and the wolf eats the meat and gnaws on the bones. And then the next animal that comes and feeds it is the Arctic fox, who gets the leftovers. So that's their circle of life, and it's pretty undisturbed where we are. So this is.
So one of the things to notice about seal behavior is that seals build their dens from the water up. So they'll create an opening in the ice, and then they'll hollow out the den, but there'll be no opening to the top snow. And it is, as Marianne described, the polar bears come in, and with their weight, they break open from the top the seal den, and hopefully they can get a meal out of it. But the actual seal den is, to the normal eye, is obscured because there's no opening to the surface.
So, okay. We kept on further. This is getting towards the night, and we came upon this. This is sea ice again. We are constantly traveling on sea ice. And this, the guides immediately, Terry, the lead guide, said, this is a pack of 7 or 8 wolves. And these are very fresh tracks. And we knew that we were, and there were tracks all over. We had continued, they were crisscrossing the sea ice. There were polar bear tracks, there were wolf tracks, there were Arctic fox tracks. And it was a maze of them. But this was one big, beautiful set of tracks where they're traveling together. And what we did is we decided this night that we would camp down near here on, not on the sea ice, but we would stay on a little spit of land that you could see where there was rocks. And hopefully find the wolves the next day. We all needed a good night's sleep. We had been traveling. One of the ski-doos turned over. I mean, there were no safety briefings. There was nothing. I mean, we're Michael and I are lucky we have all our extremities and not a broken noggin. You know, we didn't know, this was a lot of part about not knowing, you know, too much. Not these Inuit have done this so few times, you know, and they with so little resources. But anyway, so we bedded down here. And then the next morning, we were asleep in our tent, and we heard Amit and Jason, who were in another tent, screaming, "Wolf, wolf, wolf." So we all like peeked out. Of course, we're freezing. So we peeked out and we see these wolves taking off from our camp. What the wolves had done is they were yanking on the tent strings and pawing at the canvas. I'm very thankful it wasn't our tent. I'm sure I would have had a heart attack thinking it was more of a polar bear, because they said they didn't know what it was, but then they peeked out and the wolves were, you know, surprised to see them. So the wolves trotted off. We immediately got dressed, got on the ski-doos, followed them. You know, we had a good 20 minutes or so behind them, and they were moving pretty swiftly. We came upon this pack, and this wolf that you see right here was one of the most ambitious. I'm not sure if he was the leader, but he was the character for sure. This wolf literally jogged up to us and had the zoomies. And this is one of a photo I captured of him jump in the air. And you could tell he was constantly saying, "Are you watching me? Are you watching me?" And he was just dancing and rolling and playing. And the other wolves would kind of like, they were laying down, and then you can go to the next photo if you want. Just walking by, you know, and keep in mind, it's really, I'm laying on the ground. It's very, very cold and hard to manipulate the camera. But this wolf was so entertaining. This is the same wolf, and he just had, I'm not calling it a he, I think it was a male. But just, you know, entertaining. There's another one right after that. So rolling again, you know, this was the same wolf. Scent mark. This is a scent marking attribute and behavior of the wolf, but he's also just completely relaxed with us. And these wolves probably have seen maybe 10 humans their whole lives, right? So these are, you know, still pretty amazing. Since we didn't really, so this is in the area we were in is called Bay Fjord, and Bay Fjord is this beautiful, as it kind of gives you a sense of where we are. We came back later that night, and if you probably can't see it too well on this photo, all of their faces are bright red. So if you go to the next, they've had a meal, and this is a seal carcass, and there were 2 pieces to the seal carcass that they had ripped apart. And every single one of these beautiful white wolves had red faces like this. And they're cleaning off the meat, and they were caching this, obviously. This had been, they were digging it up and moving it around. And the next I have a live video of how some of it transpired. So they're just sort of a, you know, so, you know, it was interesting because we were there. They were going on about their activities. This one's going to go cache it somewhere. Going on about their activities, but they largely ignored us, and they continued about their behavior. So this is in broad daylight, middle of the day. We decided that we would go back to camp, sleep a couple of hours, and hopefully come back and see them again. since they were generally in the same area. We also had witnessed a muskox herd. So in the next photo, you're going to see, this is what we came back to. So this is the chess match of a herd of muskox and a group of Arctic wolves, like pack of Arctic wolves. This was the assigned leader for this particular mission. The screen on the camera wasn't wide enough. There's 7 other wolves laying down farther to the right. This one's role was to kind of assess these muskox. Is there a weak one? Is there a baby? Is there, you know, who's the biggest, baddest muskox? And you're going to see some of this behavior. I have a video. But this wolf was kind of jostling these muskox around, and the others were just asleep. And if you want to go to the next slide, I believe this is the video. Supposedly, I'm the only person that's ever had this. So here's what's happened, this footage. As you can see, they spun out a little baby. This is a very young muskox. And the posture that these muskox have is they turn and they face the wolf. And the wolf, you know, they're trying to get away from the wolf, obviously. And there's still just one wolf sort of playing with them. And this poor little baby is thrust out. We witnessed this a couple of times. And they're also going up a mountain, which is a technique that the wolf will do. The wolf will try to push the muskox up a mountain. So here comes the wolf. Obviously, he identifies the baby, which should be an easy capture if the parents keep spinning it out like they do the herd.
But they're in full defensive mode right now with the baby in the middle.
They are in full defensive mode. So he checks that one out, and then he goes to the next one. If you'll watch the muskox, the third from the left, this is the leader of the muskox herd. He is the male bull of the herd, and you're going to watch his behavior with this wolf. Shaking of a muskox is a sign of aggression. So he steps forward and he's challenging this wolf and saying, "Not today." But if you go to the next picture, yeah, this was allegedly Disney was interested in this video. I'm not sure, I haven't heard from them, but they had been, one of their goals was to get the a wolf charging a muskox herd. It's apparently very rare. Don't worry, I had this struggle myself with the.
What was your trick? Sorry, everyone.
The arrow to the right. Just keep yeah, try that.
There we go.
There we go.
Thank
So we stayed there for a very long time. These are the wolves sleeping. Oops, go back.
Go back.
And
There you go.
it was so beautiful. Again, it was absolutely stunning. The sun, it looked like a candle, and all of these iPhone. This is a camera photo, but you know, there were lots of iPhone pictures taken as well. But this is how we left it. The wolves were sleeping. The other wolf was still. He had laid down. The muskox had all laid down. Michael and I couldn't take it anymore, and the Inuit were happy to take us back because they were actually very cold as well. Amit stayed with one of the Inuit.
Poor Jason.
Yeah, poor Jason. And they actually were able to witness the wolves. They did get the baby, sadly. But this is hence the circle of life. But it was just a beautiful memory, this photo. Okay. And this was our last night too. So that was our last night and opportunity. We had been on the ice for 13 days at this point. We had traveled. Yeah.
No, it's because where we are now is Fjord, and that's a 2-day travel from where we were just at in Bay Fjord. So that took 2 days to get here.
Yeah, it was on snowmobiles. Michael and I, every night we got off that snowmobile because there is definitely a clear difference in the smoothness of sea ice. There is some beautiful smooth sea ice, and then there's some sea ice where, because I guess waves when it froze, there's jutting up, and oh my goodness. And we're relying on 3 20-something-year-old young men who really don't see the problem of just charging over some of these bumps. Woo! It was tough. There was a lot of Advils shared on this trip. But this is the last night. Now, this particular cabin is about 80 miles north. So we've been north the whole time of Grise Fjord, the settlement. This is about 80 miles north of Grise Fjord, and this is a cabin that has been used where they hunt from. So this was our last night. We stayed here. It was supposed to just be an overnight, and then we would have our last 80 miles back to Grise Fjord and end our journey there and spend one night there. So we're in this beautiful, very happy, even though Michael and I decided we weren't going to give up our tent yet. We stayed in the tent instead of staying with the 4 men in the cabin. But lo and behold, while we're packing up, I'm standing there talking to Amit. We're kind of discussing what a wonderful trip it's been and how fortunate we've been to see all these wolves. And out of the corner of my eye, I see a pack of wolves coming. And I said, oh my gosh, there's a pack of wolves coming right now over the sea ice. So if you want to go to the next page, this is probably the most beautiful wolf I saw while I was there. This wolf, well, it was clean, number one, but its coat, again, the same behavior. The leader would come close to us. And the Inuit right away, Terry, who's done this 10 times in 3 years, said, this is a pack that's never been seen. No one has ever seen this pack. We found tracks. No one knew anything about this pack. It was a pack of 7, excuse me. And this one lead wolf came up to us, and you can go to the next picture, and gave us about 15 minutes of posing and looking at us. It did not do the scent marking thing, so we were probably the first humans they've ever seen. But again, he was probably got within about 30 feet of us. And we were all packed up, and it was a mad scramble to get the cameras attached again. It was a little warmer that day. It was only 5 degrees, so I was able to function a little better. But this wolf was absolutely stunning. Male, the leader. The others stayed back. Terry, Noah, the lead guide, identified that there were 2 younger pups. There were no pups because pup season is in the summer, but 2 1-year-olds, and they were kind of playing together on the ice. But it was absolutely just, so overall we saw, was it 18 wolves? We saw 18
wolves,
18 wolves out of about 200. So that's pretty good.
16 polar bears, no, 6
6
polar
polar
bears.
bears.
Yep,
Yeah.
couple of foxes.
So this was kind of the end of the wolves. And if you go to the next slide, we get on the snowmobiles. Oh, we were getting ready to get and pull our Kamituck back. And I'll get a little bit more into the people. This is Terry. Terry's a remarkable young man. He was born in Grise Fjord. Actually, it was probably, yeah, no, they don't have babies in Grise Fjord. They moved the mothers to Ottawa, which is 2 days and 4 airplanes away. When you get to like your 4th or 5th month of pregnancy, you're required to go to Ottawa. So, but he was technically grown up in Grise Fjord, he's college educated in Ottawa. He is married with 3 children and is one of the happiest, all 3 of these guides. I mean, the things that you and I, maybe we go outside to start our lawnmower and you pull in the string and pull in the string, you go like, oh God. Literally, these ski-doos would break all the time. And I'd be terrified. And they would giggle like little girls. Fix the ski-doo, maybe stop for 2 hours, giggle, have fun, get back on, ride off. Nothing was a problem to them. It was unbelievable. And as we spent more time with them, we realized how little they have. I mean, they have like this sled. He told me in the beginning of the trip, he goes, how about this sled? I just built it. And then when I identified for him, I said, oh no, the sled's the Kamituck. It's a Kamituck. The Kamituck is Kamitik. Is broken. And he said, oh, well, and he twisted his leg in. He goes, I'll leave it here and I'll come back with some tools and fix it next week or something, like it was no big deal. So we put all the stuff that was in there in the last Kamituck that actually worked and headed off to Grise Fjord. But this kind of epitomizes the spirit and the happiness. These are the happiest people I have ever met, and they have so little. So you could go to the next slide. So we spent the day, this is Grise Fjord. So they live on the edge of the sea ice. There is a little village there. There are 140 people there, 135, 140. And when we came in on our ski-doos, they did have a satellite radio. We didn't have any cell reception unless we had a Starlink going, but they had their little satellite radios. And they was letting their wives and mothers know that they were on their way back. And about 40 people waved us in. Like we were like, it was like, homecoming celebrities. And they were so happy to see these 3 young men that we had taken from them, because this is a dangerous venture. Terry's in the middle, Nolan's on the right. He's done this about 5 times. And then Jason on the left, a father of 4 children and wife and 4 children.
So Marianne mentioned before that Jason, when he was coming out of the seal den, Jason had never, this was his first trip north, like really north. Nolan had never been beyond the end of the fjord until 2 years ago. So again, it emphasizes just the remoteness and the wildness of where we were.
Yeah. And just kind of a cute thing, Nolan and Terry have these hats that I brought them. We have a local company that I know of here, and he makes beanies. And his company's name is Buongiorno, an Italian phrase that many of us have heard before. Buongiorno, of course, good day. I gave them these hats because we wanted to take a picture, because I said to the guy, I said, look, this is the farthest north your hats will ever arrive. And they looked at the hats and they were puzzled by them. And they said, what does that say? I said, Buongiorno. They go, what is that? They had never seen it. And I said, Buongiorno. And they were so excited. I said, it's in Italian. They go, Italian? Literally, these people, we even identified when we were stuck in our tent for a day, we literally had 2 outlets. One outlet for the generator, for Starlink, excuse me. This came from the generator. And one outlet for us to share amongst the 3 tents for cell phones and camera gear and battery operated warming body systems, and you name it. I had a surge protector with about 6 outlets on it. And Terry walked in there and he came to bring us our food in the middle of the storm and said, and he looked at the surge protector and he said, what is that? And I said, it's a surge protector. And he goes, do all of those plugs work from that one plug? So that gives you an idea of how little these people have. And on the last note, it's been a very long dream of mine to wear a pair of polar bear pants. And so Nolan went back and got his grandfather's polar bear pants for me to wear. So I got to be in the high Arctic chic. They wear polar bear pants because they need to keep warm. They do not abuse, the wildlife, but
They utilize, these guys are subsistence hunters, and they utilize every bit of the animal that they harvest. And whether it's for clothing or warmth or feed or feeding their dogs, whatever it is, it's full utilization. Nothing goes to waste.
So, yeah, on that note, they now see that these wolves are a way for them to earn money. And these wolves aren't near their home. In Grease Fjord, we're 100 miles away, 80 miles away from where that wolf pack was that they had never seen before. So they're a good distance away from the wolves. They have a lot of Arctic foxes here, and the muskox will roam into town here. So there's muskox here, and there are seals here. But just to give you an idea, we arrived in Grease Fjord. Michael and I were literally starving because we did not have a lot of food. And we went to what they call their co-op in Canada and some of the Arctic areas. Co-op is their grocery store. We ran into Nolan there. We checked into the little Grease Fjord where we were so happy to see a glass of cold water, for example. But we went to this co-op. We ran into Nolan. He was checking out at the co-op counter, and he had a 40-pound bag of IAM's dry dog food. And the cashier rang him up, and it was $300. Canada isn't subsidizing these people for being up there, and it's kind of an interesting story how they ended up here. They are 3 generations in of when Canada relocated about 7 Inuit family to stake their sovereignty, to cement their sovereignty in the high Arctic, because during the Cold War, there was some concerns about Russia, even Greenland, people coming over from Denmark, Canada developed what's called the High Arctic Act and chose 7 Inuit families at random just outside of Quebec and force relocated these families. And we were fortunate enough to spend about 5 hours with one of the original people who was 3 years old, who was forced with his family. He was only 3, but he grew up and he saw the sadness and the depression and the starvation. I mean, these people were not prepared. Outside of Quebec, the Inuit that live there have 17 food sources, and up here in Greece Fjord, there's literally 3 food sources for these people. They don't have a chicken, they don't have a greenhouse, they don't have anything. They rely on this co-op and sustenance hunting for anything. So,
The fellow's name is Larry Aldelock, and he does have a book out that we're waiting to receive to learn a little bit more about his experience with the Canadian government. And it's a very long story that's for a different conversation.
yes, so that's pretty much it. Ladies, do you want to?
I think
Feed me the-
Rebecca's going to take
Okay.
over.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm speechless, but I'm going to start from the top and go. There's some really great questions in the panel. I'm just going to start from the top and go from there. So the first one is actually from Topher, from our IT guy at the Wolf Center. How do you manage your equipment in such cold temperatures?
Great question. You never bring it inside and you never get it warm. It lives outside. And I've always been a Nikon advocate, and I certainly am now, because I only changed my batteries 2 times the entire time I was there. The battery was amazing. So, and I use the camera a lot. So the best thing to do is just acclimatize it.
One question that was asked that Michael actually answered, but just so everyone can hear the answer, it was how far away from you for the nearest town? And the answer was 350 miles.
Yes.
Right. That's right. So when we left Eureka, Eureka's up north and Greece Fjord is due south at the very end or south end of Ellesmere Island. And as the crow flies from where we were in Silder Fjord, our camp to Greece Fjord is 350 miles. Now that doesn't really account for the amount of time or travel we did in searching for wildlife. So you could probably assume our time there, we were somewhere around 550 or 600 miles of traveling.
Next question. What is the average lifespan and pack size for tundra wolves? And then in parentheses, amazing photos.
Oh, thank you, Claudine. That was very sweet. So the pack sizes we saw ranged from a pack of 3 to a pack of 8. I do know there was a pack of 9 there when Amit was there last year, and that's the pack we think split off into a 3 and a 5. So we don't know. And I know I'm not a wolf expert, but there are tundra wolves and there are Arctic wolves, and they're not the same. I'm not sure if anybody can answer. Tundra wolves, I believe, are in Alaska, but I'm not positive. I don't want to say that. I know that this species is a subspecies of the gray wolf. It's Arctos canis lupus is Arctic wolf. So I'm sorry I can't answer the question any better than that. Oh, there was a life.
Well, on pack size with David Misch, the biologist, the Eureka wolf pack during his time of study ranged from 3 all the way up to 20 or 19. And that was over a 30-year period. So it was very interesting. The elasticity, I'll use the word, of packs. And he wasn't able, because he was only there in the summer, he wasn't really able to easily identify where they dispersed to, except then he did collar one wolf called Brutus. Brutus ranged kind of not like your typical wolf, because he ranged all the way over to Axel Hedberg, and they believed that he had more than one family running.
And the other thing is, as far as age goes, Brutus was 11 when he died.
Yeah.
So they do know that. So that was, I think, a very long life for such harsh conditions and for a male leader of a pack.
And Brutus did die naturally.
And yeah.
Just make that clear.
Yeah. That's the only wolf they've ever collared, though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next question is, and you went into this about the equipment. How do you keep your cameras from freezing?
They were frozen.
They were just
they were
just frozen.
They did work, but they were frozen.
They were frozen. It was very hard. If you're a photographer, you know, you have, like I said, when I put it up to the viewfinder to my eye, forget it. Everything fogged up. It was frozen, so it had ice crystals on it. But if I kept the camera and used my finger, I couldn't use my glasses. I need my glasses, so it was hard. I'm trying to just follow the eye tracking, which the Nikon system, all the camera systems at this point will have eye tracking for animals. So I did a lot of the photos like that.
The
It
other
was
thing,
not
just
easy.
not just the viewfinder, it took us about 5 days to figure out how to manage our goggles so they wouldn't freeze up. I mean, for the first 5 days, we didn't see anything but ice and fog in the inside of our goggles. And then we finally figured out that you never leave your goggles on when you stop, because you immediately heat them up. Your goggles, just like the cameras, live outside when you're not using them. And you only put them on when the snow machines start going forward. So it took about 5 days to figure that out also. So a lot of stuff got learned on the fly.
Yeah. Will you, or have you already written a book about this incredible experience? Photos included, of course.
Joyce, would you like to help me collaborate with that? We just got back actually at the end of April. But
Come on.
we are going back.
Yeah.
We are going back. So I might want to go back one more time. So I would love to do this. I've been amazed at the response from you here tonight, and also the live presentation I did 2 weeks ago, and I'm doing another one tomorrow night as well. So it's lovely, especially in the world that we live in. It's lovely to see this many people get to experience something that more than likely less than 0.01% of the people in the world will go there. I had a finished document. I had 27,000 hits to my Instagram the last week I was there, and I only have 1,200 followers, so this was crazy. And I was getting a lot of messages, crazy messages. One of them was from a Finnish documentary company that said, okay, we want to go. You can't just go there. You will die. You need to have experience. You have to just take into account your equipment may not work there. I mean, look, lots of our equipment did not work. My drone did not work there very well. A 45-minute battery had 12 minutes to it, and that was it. So
it's also the availability of the guides. I mean, there's just not enough people to facilitate any kind of scale up there.
There's literally,
I mean, there's Terry, Nolan, and maybe Jason when he can do it, maybe 2 or 3 other guides around, but there's no infrastructure.
there's nothing.
There's nothing.
Yeah, you have to bullet again, water. You can't bring your water. You have to bring your fuel. It's unbelievable. And not regular fuel works there. There's only kerosene and jet fuel that won't freeze. And they were mixing it we were lucky we didn't blow up with our own fuel.
No, but I mean, it's true. Like propane canisters don't work because they're just too cold. They can't build any pressure, and they won't expel at a rate that will make any kind of heat.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
I see this. Were you afraid of polar bears? They were afraid of us. They ran. They are hunted there, but even not that far north. But they were very, very skittish. They ran.
Next question, also from Joyce. Did you notice any signs of global warming? And if so, how did it affect the environment?
Talk about the weather station chart.
Well, so the weather station. So, well, first of all, it's our first time there. We asked the Inuit if they had seen changes. They have not. So they actually, Terry is now involved in a coastal study that
water column and mineral deposits coming off glaciers and stuff, and then mineral content from runoff. And he's doing a joint project with Canada and then also a research group in Greenland.
So about the temperatures, we did get an hour inside the weather station. We were guarded while we were in there. And we asked the same question. Have you seen it warming here? And they showed us, they had like a flip chart of maps for 25 years that they had kept. It has not changed. The graphs of the temperatures were the same.
They're very stable.
Very stable. So that's all I can share with you about that. But I found that pretty interesting. I just assumed already I'd know the answer, and I was wrong. It has not cooled off at all in Eureka.
Just a nice comment. I'm an international psychologist with an emphasis on Indigenous people and cultures. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and knowledge of these wonderful people.
Oh, I'd love to connect with you. We have so many wonderful experiences with those people. I mean, we came for the wolves. This is the way I'd like to describe this. Came for the wolves and fell in love with the people. Fell in love with them. And one of the reasons we're going back, we've invited them here. We'd love to see them. But they are amazing, resilient, happy with so little.
Next question. I know you kind of talked about this a little. Is there any concern about hunters coming in for the wolves or polar bear, or is it so remote that it's not a worry?
You see some polar bear hunting activity on a big game level in some of the, like outside of Resolute, which is on Cornwallis Island. It's much more accessible, being that there's a really significant airport in a significant town, and it's tiny compared to Ellesmere Island as far as getting out into the environment where you may find bears. Just like any of the hunting going on in the United States, these guys get X number of tags and they monetize their tags as Indigenous people for the big game hunters. And then the hunt happens, the bear is taken, and then the Inuit will again utilize that bear fully. But it also is a monetization of the wildlife. Now, I don't know that with one, accessibility where we are, tough to do. Two, I do think that the keeping the wolves alive and safe is much more in the best interest of Grease Fjord guides and people than monetizing it in a way of hunting. I don't really see that happening. Versus, and also, people, you want to hunt wolves, you can go to Idaho, you can blast, that's easy to do in Idaho and some of the Montana places. People go to the Arctic to hunt polar bears or caribou, and again, they're going to get a caribou to eat it or to give it back to the Indigenous people. So it's a question we haven't asked, but that's my impression.
The weather is so extreme there. Unless they hired an Inuit, and the Inuit at this point are seeing their future, and they're seeing conservation in their future, which was lovely to see. So I think Michael answered the question, but
Next question. Did these Arctic wolves behave similarly or differently than other wolves you may have observed in the wild, such as Yellowstone?
very different.
Yeah, well, one was just the way they moved through wilderness. I mean, again, as I mentioned earlier, the Yellowstone wolves, they tend to run in a line, whereas your Arctic wolves, when they travel, they spread out. As far as pack dynamics, I can't say we have any real strong opinion on pack dynamics. They seem kind of similar, but I don't know that I can't say they're that. I mean, they don't seem that much different.
I think the big difference is it was clear that these wolves have never been abused by humans. They've never been, so hence that's why they would walk right up to you and roll in front of you and tug at your boot playfully. Whereas a Yellowstone wolf would never do that. I mean, I don't know anybody's had that experience. I certainly have never heard of it before. Because it's in their DNA that at this point they've been hunted and they know to run and it's danger. Well, we hope.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then this looks like it's the final question. Do you feel more of the wolves should be collared, or is it too cold to get readings?
It's not too cold to get readings because they proved that out with very old equipment on Brutus a number of years ago, and they had very good tracking of what Brutus was doing through the whole Eureka, Axel Hedberg area. I don't know that it would hurt to collar a couple of them, because I think wolf knowledge and behavior, if the goal is to really take care and be stewards of these wolves, would be beneficial, because they really don't have a lot of information as far as
Right.
what these guys are doing or scale and scope of their range.
They had Brutus's scattergram of all the data points that where he had checked in. It was huge. It
Yeah.
was a huge range. So it would be I think, it would be very interesting. I mean, I just think that for any one or organization to try to scale something, I mean, there's only about 4 or 5 weeks of the year you can do this. And I thought I saw another question at one point, is like, would you consider going in spring or summer? Here's why you cannot do that. The ice becomes unstable. So we are traveling on sea ice. We're basically following their tracks. They ski-dooed up to meet us in Eureka. We're following our tracks. The guides are following their tracks back. They're also seeing cracks in the ice, so
It's a dynamic environment.
so we're on water basically, even though it's never really water. Maybe 6 weeks of the year is water. It's frozen, but it's unstable. So you can't, even an all-terrain vehicle, a boat, there's no way.
Yeah, in summer, the terrain again is extremely difficult. Again, to take a four-wheeler and not to talk too much about David Nish, but he really is the go-to guy on this environment. He wouldn't even, when the wolves went to the south side of Fjord, he wouldn't even attempt to drive around the fjord, because it'd be about 50 miles with his four-wheeler. He's like, I can't, the terrain is just too rough. So again, access and infrastructure, access is extraordinarily difficult, except in the winter when you can actually travel on sea ice, and fly in and land even on sea ice if you had to, if not at Eureka Airport. Or two, to try and get around on a four-wheeler. And you just can't get the range that you would need to actually be effective in studying the wolves. So yes, we are going back actually later, and this is in 2027, and we're going in June, and we're going to be on the flow edge, which is kind of when the ice starts to break up, and that gets a whole different shift in the ecology and the animals that coming in, because whales start coming in, polar bears become narwhals, belugas. It just the multitude of birds that are now migrating north to have their summer breeding ground. I mean, it's just a completely different environmental or ecological nirvana, as one of the professors at my school talked about.
That's well, we look forward to your next webinar then in 2026. Well, unless you guys have anything you want to add that you didn't say, I can go ahead and just offer some closing remarks. You're getting a lot of thank yous, and this is wonderful. And
thank you.
As you
interested. Yeah.
So I just want to thank everyone for spending your evening with us. We hope you enjoyed this adventure to Ellesmere Island as much as I did. Huge thanks to you both for bringing us along on this journey. As you said, this is such a unique thing that very few people will ever get to see or do. So we're so grateful. I'm so grateful to have this opportunity for you to share this with us. To everyone out there, please keep an eye on your inbox. We'll be sending a follow-up email soon with the recording and a few extra goodies in case you want to rewatch or share tonight's webinar with a fellow wolf lover. Until next time, take care and have a great night. And thank you again to both of you.
Thanks, you.
Guys.
Thanks everyone for listening and staying
Bye.
on the call. Thank you.
Take care. Have a good
Bye,
night.
Rebecca.